NASA's Space Shuttle program was active from 1981 to 2011 and contained major triumphs in the 30 years it was active in. The program established the belief that space was a new frontier and that technology would dramatically advance. But tragically, there were 2 explosions, claiming 14 lives and the most loved teacher in America. The Challenger space shuttle was set to launch on January 28, 1986, from the Kennedy Space Center. Everyone was ready, the crew, the adults, the children, but perhaps not the space shuttle. The temperature at the time was 36 degrees Fahrenheit, 15 degrees colder than any previous space shuttle launch. A part of the space shuttle, called the O-ring, that is meant to seal sections of the spacecraft, had failed due to the cold weather. Since the lack of inspection and the rush to launch the Challenger, this fatal flaw passed under the radar. And then, 73 seconds into the air, the Challenger space shuttle, containing 7 crew members, exploded in a tragic ball of fire. This explosion was a very tragic moment for everyone. Hundreds of thousands of children watched the Challenger explode, and that in itself could be the biggest tragedy. Many schools had brought in devices to watch the Challenger take off, and it was supposed to be a very triumphant moment. But to their horror, the Challenger blew up, leaving everyone questioning the idea of space exploration. This was the first ever attempt to send a person into space that didn't spend their entire lives training to be an astronaut. And that failed, crushing dreams of many aspiring young minds. Everyone was terrified when they heard what had happened, and the death of Krista McAuliffe is what mortified people the most and caused them to lose their trust in NASA. Krista McAuliffe obtained her first teaching position in 1970 as an American history teacher at Benjamin Foolish Junior High School in Morningside, Maryland. On January 28, 1986, all the students from Benjamin Foolish Junior High would gather in the auditorium and witness the Challenger burst into flames alongside their beloved teacher.
They had a hunger to explore the universe and discover its truths. They wished to serve, and they did. They served all of us. We've grown used to wonders in this century. It's hard to dazzle us. But for 25 years, the United States space program has been doing just that. We've grown used to the idea of space, and perhaps we forget that we've only just begun. We're still pioneers. They, the members of the Challenger crew, were pioneers.
The Challenger space shuttle gave birth to many triumphs, such as carrying the first American woman astronaut in 1983 and the first African American astronaut in August of the same year. But all those triumphs seemed to come crashing down when tragedy struck. Eventually, NASA was able to regroup themselves, and the first space shuttle flight after the Challenger disaster was launched on September 29, 1988. This carved the pathway for the 87 more space shuttles launched in the time span of just 15 years. Each one of these space shuttles had a purpose, and with each successful launch, there's a huge triumph. On January 25, 1984, Ronald Reagan directed NASA to start building the International Space Station. Then, on December 4, 1988, Unity, the first US-built component of the ISS, was launched, a huge triumph for the space shuttle program. The building of the ISS triumphantly led to the developing of improved vaccines, the monitoring of natural disasters from space, and helped provide students with multiple technological opportunities. The dreams that were previously shattered were on the rise again. Many people started to discover the wonders of space exploration and how important it is. With all the space shuttles that NASA was launching, it seemed like they could do nothing wrong.
10, 9, 8, 7. We have a go for main engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of Space Shuttle Columbia with a multitude of national and international space research experiments.
Houston now controlling the flight of Columbia, the international research mission finally underway.
Roger, roll, Columbia.
On January 16, 2003, Space Shuttle Columbia took off from the Kennedy Space Center, carrying 7 crew members, 2 of them being Kalpana Chawla, the first American Indian in space, and Ilan Ramon, the first Israeli in space. This mission went nowhere close to the Hubble Space Telescope or the International Space Station. It was instead a microgravity research mission. Everything was going fine, and after roughly 15 days in space, the Columbia was cleared for re-entry. But then it all went wrong.
Columbia, Houston, comm check. Columbia, Houston, UHF, comm check.
On February 1st, 2003, tragedy struck, and the Space Shuttle Columbia disintegrated shortly after re-entering Earth's atmosphere. All 7 crew members aboard died. This was another massive blowback for NASA. This disaster once again brought up the conversation about the risks and dangers of exploring space. Many people also started to doubt how NASA inspects their space shuttles. Both explosions, the Challenger disaster and the Columbia disaster, seemed preventable. During testing, NASA found out that when the Columbia was launching, a piece of foam from the external fuel tank was falling off and sometimes hitting the left wing of the space shuttle. But at the time, that wasn't considered anything to be worried about. Unfortunately, when the Columbia was launched, the piece of foam fell off and struck the left wing of the space shuttle. This caused serious damage and led to the Columbia exploding when re-entering Earth's atmosphere. This was a very tragic moment for everyone, but major reforms were starting to be made. The space shuttle fleet was grounded to add countless more safety measures and procedures. Then, 2.5 years later, NASA resumed the space shuttle program, launching 22 more successful missions until the space shuttle program was shut down in 2011.
Roger, roll, Atlantis.
The space shuttle program also has a huge influence on modern space exploration. The recent launch of SpaceX's Falcon Heavy in 2018 showed how it was the most powerful operational rocket in the world by a factor of 2. This Falcon Heavy also was a huge breakthrough in technology, as it was a rapidly reusable spacecraft and costed $250 million less than its closest competition. But without the influence of the space shuttle program, this may have never been possible. The space shuttle program has its fair share of triumphs, such as helping build the International Space Station and launching numerous successful space shuttles. But with this triumph came an immense tragedy of losing 14 people to disasters such as the Challenger Space Shuttle explosion and the Columbia Space Shuttle explosion. It is important to remember these disasters and the people involved in it, who helped us see new frontiers and brought a new era of technology.